don't know, I'm Gwen Mayer, and I'm the archivist at the Hudson Library and Historical Society. And tonight we're delighted to host Angie Hockman. Angie is a bright new novelist, and this is her book, Shipped. I don't know if you can see it. And it's all about, it's a wonderful fictional account of sort of a rom-com. We call them a romance comedy, and it's all about a potential romance aboard a cruise ship. I'm going to very quickly tell you that Angie is from Northeast Ohio. She has a past history, including the law and education and ecotourism, but this is her first book. So I'm going to hand it over to Angie and let her speak a little about her writing, why she chose to do this, and say good evening, Angie.
Sure. Thank you so much, Gwen. And thank you so much to you in the Hudson Library for hosting me tonight. And thank you everyone who is tuning in. I appreciate you being here so very much. And like Gwen said, thanks so much for hanging with us as we sorted out a few technical issues. So like Gwen said, I'm Angie Hockman. I live on the west side of Cleveland. So I'm a local here, and I'm a romantic comedy author. So Shipped, like Gwen said, is my first novel, and it follows an ambitious marketing manager, and she works for an eco-adventure cruise line, and she is up for the promotion of her dreams. But so is her nemesis, the remotely working social media manager. And although they've never met in person before, their battles are the stuff of office legend. So to decide the promotion, their boss sends them down on a company cruise to the Galapagos Islands. And oh no, when she boards the ship, she figures out maybe he's not as terrible as she thought he was, and he's actually pretty attractive and nice and surprising in many ways. So, island adventures ensue, and it's just a really fun escapist story. It was really fun for me to write. I'm a longtime romance reader. I'm a big fan of rom-coms, and the Galapagos Islands are a very special place to me. So I was delighted to draw upon my experience working in ecotourism, my past travels. I visited the Galapagos in 2016 and traveled there aboard a Lindblad National Geographic expedition. So I definitely drew from those sort of real life experiences in coming up with the premise for Shipped.
Thanks, Angie. Can you tell us a little more about the book, or maybe read a section of the book?
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, so I gave you a little sort of snapshot of what to expect in terms of what the story is about. And I'd love to read a little bit from chapter 1, if that's okay. Can do a little reading of like 8 to 10 minutes.
That would be wonderful.
Awesome. So the story starts out and it follows my protagonist, Henley. And like I said, Henley's very ambitious. She's a 20-something and she's working full time, going to grad school. And the story opens with her coming home to her Seattle apartment after a very long day of working and going to grad school. So the story opens and we see a little glimpse into her life. And we get to learn a little bit more about Graham along the way. So here we go. Here's a reading from chapter 1 of Shipped. Reaching my apartment, I shove my key into the lock and shoulder open the door. A raspy yowl greets me. I set my bag on the floor and flip on the light. Hi, Noodles. I hang my keys on a hook by the door and my coat in the narrow front closet. Noodles the cat saunters into the foyer. He's a long-haired gray tabby with wiry fur that sticks out every which way, no matter how much I brush him, and golden green eyes that focus in 2 completely different directions. One time I Googled, what's the opposite of cross-eyed? And the term divergent strabismus popped up, which sounds like a sci-fi novel, more so than a medical condition, but the vet said in his case, it's hereditary, so nothing to worry about. Whatever it's called, though, Noodles is one rough-looking cat. Hence his status as the veteran resident of the local animal shelter before I adopted him last summer. I reach down to scratch Noodles under the chin. He croaks a meow like he's been smoking 2 packs a day for a decade. Miss me? Silence. I see how it is. I head to the kitchen and Noodles trots after me. I feed my smug cat before changing into yoga pants and a Boise State t-shirt. Grabbing a container of leftover quinoa salad from the fridge, I pad across the wood floor with a glass of Pinot Grigio back to my cozy living room. Anyone who steps into my one-bedroom Belltown apartment would think I'm a first-rate world traveler, if they didn't know me. Oversized, colorful maps, framed marinescapes, and wildlife portraits are arranged in a collage above my ruby sofa. Along the opposite wall, which I've painted the same jewel tone shade of reddish pink, stacks of marketing and travel books teeter on a trunk, while a Craigslist armchair squats under the window. It's like National Geographic and Porthole Cruise magazine had a baby, and that baby splatted all over my apartment. But the truth is, except for a handful of trips to Colorado as a kid and one generic spring break in Cancun when I was 19, I've never been outside the Pacific Northwest. No, I'm not a fraud. I'm a marketing manager for a global adventure cruise line. So all the posters and prints? Office swag. Thanks, Sequest Adventures, for the cheap decorating. It's not that I don't want to travel. When I took this job 3 years ago, I had high hopes for seeing the world. Then life happened. Career ambitions, grad school, student loans, the vague, persistent headache that is adulting. But mostly my career. It's hard to take time out of the office when you're trying to climb the corporate ladder and make director before the age of 30. Setting my dinner and drink on my IKEA coffee table, I plop onto the sofa and yank the elastic band out of my bun. My hair tumbles over my shoulders and I shake it out, massaging the roots to ease my sore scalp. I wish I could turn in right now, just crawl into bed and clock out for the night. But my task list is burning a hole in my to-do app. I won't be able to sleep until everything is checked off, so I might as well get it over with. Taking a sip of wine, I pull up the list and read the first item. Task number 1. Confirm Graham posted British Columbia social media content. I fish my laptop out of my bag and flip it open. Noodles hops up next to me and nestles against my thigh, purring. 30 seconds later, I'm scanning Sequest Adventures' Twitter feed. I shove a bite of quinoa salad into my mouth and chew. I barely taste it as I scroll. Scanning tweet after tweet, I put down my fork, eyebrows furrowing. When I reach yesterday's tweets, rage swells inside my chest. I log onto Facebook. Same. Instagram. Same. I squeeze my eyes shut and pinch the bridge of my nose. Graham. He didn't do it. He said he would, but he didn't. So freaking typical of Mr. High and Mighty social media guru. I was right to make confirmed social media posts the number 1 item on my to-do list. I glare at the tiny photo beside Graham's name. It is strong, smooth chin and short brown hair. I hate to admit it, but the first time I saw his picture, I actually thought the arrogant jerk was handsome. And when we spoke on the phone on his very first day over a year ago, oof, I nearly melted. His voice is deep and rich and husky, like a lumberjack dipped in a chocolate fountain. Then we started working together. And it wasn't 2 weeks before Graham the Rotten Troll showed his true colors. It started when some gem video footage from one of our Costa Rica cruises landed in my inbox. Most of it was typical. Guests having fun on the hike, beaming smiles, high energy. But toward the end, the videographer included B-roll showing 2 capuchin monkeys grooming each other. It was blink or you miss it fast. One monkey appeared to sniff the other monkey's butt, made a sour face, then lost its balance and fell out of a tree. Hilarious, right? I figured, hey, people love funny animal videos, so let's cut in some other wildlife clips from our cruises, set it to music, add clever captions, and post it on social media with hashtags targeted to boost engagement. I put my halfway decent video editing skills to good use, and when I had a version I was happy with, I forwarded it to Graham, our newly minted social media manager, for posting. And the damn thing went viral. I didn't know it went viral until the next morning when our boss, James, pulled it up at our weekly department meeting. More than 50,000 views and climbing. Post engagement was up 67% and our website traffic had shot through the roof. After the clapping and laughter died down, James boomed his approval in the general direction of the speakerphone where Graham was dialed in. Fabulous, brilliant. See everyone? This is what ingenuity looks like. Well done, Graham. Well done, Graham. Not well done, Henley. And what did Graham say in response to our boss wrongly giving him all the credit? After a few seconds of staticky phone silence, he simply said, "Thank you." As if that wasn't enough, James decided to smear salt in the wound. "I wish all of you would take Graham's initiative," he said to the group, then looked directly at me. "Especially you, Henley. Costa Rica is your region, after all." I know. I probably should have said something right then and there, corrected James on the spot, and told him exactly who was responsible for the viral video. But my mouth was too full of shock to do anything except hang open like a drowned fish. And James hates being told he's wrong, especially in front of other people. Once the meeting was over, though, it was too late. Going to James at that point would have been like tattling, and who wanted to look petty in front of their boss? So Graham got away with it. He got away with swiping the credit and the praise right out from under me. That asshole. Ever since then, he's used the incident to launch himself to BFF status with our boss. The beginning and ending of every staff meeting is positively packed with testosterone-filled chatter. How's your son? How was boating last weekend? Did you catch the latest Mariners game? There was enough brown-nosing masquerading as bro bonding to make me want to smash the speakerphone into smithereens under my pointiest heels. Here's the thing. I've worked with Graham's type before. He might have the whole nice guy facade down to a science, but I knew the truth. He was a sneaky, entitled user who was willing to do whatever it took to get ahead. Graham must have figured out somewhere along the line that I was onto him, because over the past year, he's become nothing less than the bane of my professional existence. Anytime I want something done quickly, there's always a reason he can't do it. If I have an idea, he questions it. I send him an email, I get a curt response, never mind a please or thank you. Apart from the occasional video conference, I've never actually seen Graham in person since he works full-time from home. So I like to think that despite his steel-cut jaw and those deep-set eyes, he has spindly arms and legs and cottage cheese breath to match his personality. I picture a short, paunchy Graham cackling and dancing around a fire pit holding a pitchfork. Logging into Outlook, I punch out an email like I'm entering the nuclear codes.
Thank you, Angie. Sounds like Henley and Graham are going to have quite the encounter. We already have questions, and the very first one is, how did you come up with this very unique idea?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, great question. So when I first started to write Shipped, it was about January of 2018, and I knew I wanted to try my hand at a romantic comedy. And I had recently read The Hating Game by Sally Thorne and Dating You, Hating You by Christina Lauren, and I adore enemies to lovers trope. I adore office romance as well. So I was kind of flying high off of those books and thinking, ooh, I think I would really love to try my hand at an enemies to lovers office romance story, but I want to put my own spin on it, of course. And I thought, well, how can I make it unique? You know, what speaks to me, what's important to me? And I thought back to my travel experience to the Galapagos Islands. I thought, well, you know, I don't think I've ever seen a book, certainly not a romance, set in the Galapagos. What a fun opportunity to maybe bring that location in and make it central to the story. And I also, in terms of sort of inspiration, drew on my own experience working from home. I've worked from home for the last 5 years, and a lot of us have worked from home, you know, during the pandemic, so we're all getting used to that. But I always thought it was very interesting when your colleagues are on site and you're working from home and you don't interact with people on a daily basis, how easy it is to have misunderstandings if all you're getting are emails from people. There have been times where I got emails from someone and they were kind of short or brief, and I'm like, oh, maybe they're not that nice. Maybe, I didn't know what to think. And then I met them in person later on when I made it to the home office. And it's like, oh my gosh, no, you're lovely. You're wonderful. So I wanted to bring in that, that one person working on site, one person working from home, and how that also might lead to some very fun misunderstandings for my characters.
You've gotten great reviews with this book and wonderful endorsements from other authors. Have you developed friendships with these other authors? And I assume that there's sort of a romance comedy convention. Have you met many of them?
So yeah, what's really, really wonderful about romance as a genre is that there's a thriving community of romance writers, particularly on social media. And it's such a nice, warm, welcoming community. And I've just been so lucky to get to meet and know some of these other romance writers and develop some friendships with them. So yeah, I mean, it's been great. There's a group I'm a part of for debut novelists, and it's not limited to romance, it's any genre, but the 2021 debuts, that's another really phenomenal group of writers. So yeah, I mean, on the whole, the author community is a great place to be, and the people, that are part of it, I'm very proud to know.
This is a great moment for us to say that your novel is available at the Learned Owl Bookshop in Hudson. And I'm certain that with a little prompting, they could come to your website and maybe get a signed book plate for the book should they purchase it. And it's a great time to mention your website too. So if you want to do the honors, could you sort of tell us where readers can reach out and talk to you at?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did just drop my website in the chat. If anybody's interested, very easy. angiehockman.com. So if you know my name, you know my website. So yeah, if anybody, if you've purchased my book, you have a trade paperback copy and you would like a signed book plate, just shoot me a message, angiehockman.com. There's a contact section, and let me know your address, and I'd be more than happy to pop that in the mail for you.
Has writing during the pandemic or having this book come out during the pandemic altered how you thought the process would be at all?
In terms of the debut book release process? Yeah. Sure. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, yes and no, actually. I would say yes, because getting a book published, and even before that as a writer, and I'm thinking, oh, I'd really love to get a book published one day. Of course you have big dreams. It's like, the aspiring actor who's practicing their Oscar speech in the mirror or something with their hairbrush. Like I'm imagining oh, I'm in a bookstore and I'm doing this reading in person, and obviously I can't do that right now. But the good thing is that I can do it online, and it's so great with technology today that I can connect with people virtually and do a reading online and to answer questions online. So it's not exactly how I envisioned, but I think there's definitely been a silver lining in terms of being able to connect with people all over the country and in fact the world. So it has been different. And I guess on the other hand, though, because this is my debut novel, I've never gone through this before in terms of releasing a book. So I'm definitely learning along the way. So I don't have that actual experience on what it really is like to have a conventional book release. So I guess I don't know what I'm missing in some regards. So I can't, overall, I guess I can't complain.
Have you started a second novel?
Yes, I have indeed. So I actually have another romantic comedy under contract to be published by Gallery Books Simon & Schuster in summer of 2022, which I'm very, very excited about. That book is called Dream On. And it takes place closer to home than Shipped takes place. So Dream On is set in Cleveland, so set locally. And it follows a recent law school graduate, and she gets in a car accident and winds up in a coma, right? And while she's in this coma, she has dreams of this boyfriend who, when she wakes up, she realizes is not real. Right. So her family, her friends don't know him. And so she comes to terms with the fact that, oh gosh, I have all these memories of this boyfriend who doesn't exist. So it's a year later, she's moving on with her life. She's moving in with her best friend into an old Victorian in Ohio City. She's starting a new job, and she's walking down the street one day and comes across this florist shop, and she goes in, and there he is. It's her dream man. He's real. He exists. And she gets to talk to him, get to know him. And it turns out she actually knows things about him from her coma dreams that she could not possibly ever know because they'd never really met before. So yeah, it's been a real fun one to write. So yeah. I mean, check it out. That's going to be out next summer. Dream on.
Well, we'll look forward to it. About Shipped, the whole theme of ecotourism in a romance is sort of unusual, isn't it? There can't be that many that are focused on ecotourism. It's rather unique. Can you speak to your experience at the Galapagos, and do you think you'll return to this ecotourism? And are there other ones that write about this?
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of having ecotourism in a romance, I don't know of any off the top of my head, which is not to say that there aren't any. I can point folks to a really fabulous group that just got started recently, the Climate Fiction League of Writers. I think that's it. Climate Fiction Writers League. So that was just started a few months ago, and I'm a member of that as well. And it's people who write fiction in all genres that happen to also write about some of these, environmental issues. But I mean, in terms of incorporating that into Shipped, one thing that's really, really amazing about the Galapagos Islands, and I'll tell folks a little bit about them just in case you're not familiar. So the Galapagos Islands are an archipelago, a string of islands that are located 600 miles off the coast of Ecuador, so off the western coast of South America in the Pacific Ocean. And they're very remote. They're famous, of course, for Charles Darwin sailed there on the HMS Beagle, and going island to island, he saw how the different finches had different beaks that were adapted to their different food sources, and he was inspired to come up with his theory of natural selection. But yeah, so the Galapagos they're very remote, and because the islands are so remote, the wildlife there evolved largely free of predators and completely free of people until the 1500s. So when the first people came to the islands, the animals there just sort of looked at them like, what are you? Like, you're, but not afraid, but just sort of curious. And that persists to this day. So when you go to the Galapagos, you can hike through a seabird colony, and the birds are not flying away. They're just sort of hanging out. The sea lions are very curious there. The wildlife, it gives you a chance to have this very up close and personal encounter with wildlife that you just don't really get elsewhere. And because the islands are so remote, there are some conservation challenges there. So, with these early people, there are invasive species that have been inadvertently brought to the islands that are threatening the native wildlife there. So, which is all very long-winded way to say that if you travel to the Galapagos, you can't help but learn about some of these environmental challenges, and in fact see them. There's the Charles Darwin Research Station, the National Park Directorate's Tortoise Breeding Center in Puerto Ayora, the largest town in the islands. And so it was very much a natural extension of me writing about this place that is so special, it is so unique. To me, it felt like, well, I couldn't help but, bring some of these issues and these, environmental issues in. And I was also very inspired by some real work that real life companies are doing, pretty much chiefly Lindblad Expeditions. They're a leader in sustainable travel. They're the group that I traveled with in 2016. And they're committed to giving back. So I very much drew inspiration from them as well in incorporating these issues into Shipped.
What made you want to write this book?
Well, I guess I could speak, kind of broadly in terms of what made me want to write a romantic comedy. Shipped, it turns out, is not actually my first book that I finished or that I wrote. The first book I ever wrote was called The Hustler. It was a romantic suspense, and it won me the Golden Heart Award, the Romance Writers of America Golden Heart Award for one of the top unpublished manuscripts. But it never ended up getting published. And so when The Hustler didn't get published, I was talking to my literary agent, and the market for romantic suspense for traditionally published authors has tightened a little bit over the years. And she said, well, Angie, why don't you try your hand at a romantic comedy? Your writer's voice is kind of light and kind of funny. I think you could be really good at that. And I said, I would love to. I grew up in the golden age of rom-coms in the 90s and 2000s. And, and I've been a longtime reader of them as well. So yeah, I thought this sounds like fun. And, at the end of the day, as an author, I want to write the kind of story that I want to read. I want to write stories that make people smile, that make them, give them this little heart fluttery feeling and make them happy. So, yeah.
We do have a question. Someone mentioned that the book is being promoted through Brenda Novak's website and her book club. And do you know Brenda Novak? Are you a friend? Is this why it all happened, or she just happened to read it and love it?
Yeah, it was amazing. I was so shocked. I found out that Brenda Novak selected Shipped for her book group's February read. I about died. I'm like, oh my gosh, really? So that was a delightful surprise. And my book was also included in their special 4-year anniversary February book box that she has this subscription, book box service. And so I got to sign I forget, it was like 650 or 700 books came to my house, and I got to sign those and ship them off for Brenda Novak's book boxes. So that was a blast.
Has your book been released on e-media yet?
On like ebooks?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is. It's available for purchase as an ebook, trade paperback, and audiobook. So take your pick, whatever your favorite format is.
Well, what would you like your readers to know about you?
Oh, well, what would I like them to know about me? Goodness, I guess that, sorry, that just totally threw me for a loop. I guess because I'm a little bit of an open book, if you can't tell, I'm a little bit goofy, I kind of talk a lot. So I feel like I sort of put myself out there. If you want to see more of this, follow me on social media. But yeah, I mean, if you want to know a little bit about me and just sort of my history and what I've done with myself, Gwen mentioned that I have a background in law and education. And before that, actually, I'm an Ohioan, born and bred. I'm not a native Clevelander. I grew up in Columbus. I went to Wellesley College outside of Boston, so all women's college. And then I went to Case Western Law School. So in law school, I enjoyed it. I liked the law conceptually, but I knew pretty quickly, I think, that I wasn't so hot on actually practicing law. I worked as a legislative attorney for a little bit. And I ended up, when my husband got a job offer in Virginia and we moved down there, I sort of fell into a job teaching English at a private school. And I discovered this love of education. So that was tremendous. And then fast forward a few years, I had my son and we decided to move back to Ohio to be closer to family. And that's when I kind of fell into a job in the ecotourism industry. So I've been very lucky. I think in my career, I've had these different experiences, but as a writer, I think it's great to have different kind of life experiences. And I feel like I'm able to pull a lot of little things from a lot of different places and just have a lot of little things cooking up in the background in terms of story ideas. So I guess that's something about me. I'm a, bit of a random career person, but at the end of the day, I do love to write and I plan on keep doing that.
I gather you find Northeast Ohio a wonderful place for writers, especially for the community of people that may provide a support network. But my question is really more about what you do when you hit a roadblock, and have you hit roadblocks, and do you walk away from it and say, oh, I can't deal with these characters today? Or do you sit there until something else breaks? Or, how do you deal with that mental block you may have gotten?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's definitely been tough to write during a pandemic. I think there's definitely been a few blocks there. And I'm a slow writer in general. I hear people that can fast draft a first draft of a book in 6 weeks. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's bananas. I sort of plod along, but yeah, for me, I think the key is to keep moving forward and not be too hard on yourself. I have daily writing goals, but I try not to beat myself up if I don't meet them. If I'm really struggling someday, it's okay, I might even just do some drafting that's straight dialogue, or even bullet points just to get some ideas down on paper so that when I return next time to write, I'm not staring at a blank page. And if there's a day that I only write 50 words, okay, today was not a great day, tomorrow's a new day, and maybe tomorrow I'll write 1,000 words, and I'll celebrate that, so just, I think not getting too demoralized when you don't get as much done as you want, or you hit those roadblocks and you focus on little ways to keep moving forward. I think that's the key.
I've talked to other fiction writers and they tell me after you write so many books, it becomes hard to sort of keep your characters straight in your head, especially if you're introducing new characters. They keep little notebooks with all of their character names in them. Have you started your little notebook with all your character names, and how do you come up with the interesting creative names that you do? I mean, Henley is a pretty interesting name.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I've completed 2 books. I'm working on my 3rd. So I luckily am not at the point where the, characters are getting jammed up in my head. That's so maybe one day, when I have a few more books under my belt. And I think it helps too that I write standalone novels. Like I'm not writing a series where I feel like I have to keep a lot of different characters straight as they progress on their own little journeys. So that's helpful. In terms of how I came up with Henley's name and her sister Walsh, I think when I first started writing, I was thinking about what sort of little quirky details can I include about this character? What little thing in her life might speak to her character or have an impact on her character in a subtle way. And I was thinking of names, and I like sort of unconventional names, especially for characters in a book. And I was thinking, well, what if her parents are real big music fans and they name her and her sister after musicians in like a classic rock group that is, baby boomers particularly love, and how might she feel if her name's not quite in the mainstream and people get it wrong, and that she's named after, Don Henley of the Eagles. How might, like, growing up with that, how might that affect her? And those little things never made it into the book or made it onto the page, but they were informative for me as the author to kind of have this in my head. And part of it is also just sort of intuitive. It's like I tried out different names for my characters, and Henley just felt right at the end of the day. And then and then, like, bonus, I got to work in a little bit of this, this backstory through her name.
So in your next book that's set in Northeast Ohio, specifically Cleveland, do you bring the setting more to life? I think the setting was kind of pivotal and shipped in some ways. And I think that it sounds like in your next book, your setting's going to be very pivotal as well. So
part of the reason that I'm setting my next book in Cleveland is, and I don't want to give like too much away since I'm still drafting, but I have this character who, something really tragic happened to her, right? She's like in this coma. It took a long time for her to physically recover, emotionally recover. And this is a rom-com. This is not like a tragic story or anything, but she's a character who has a lot of grit. She is a go-getter. She has worked hard all her life. She's graduated from law school, top of her class. She has these goals, and she's still working hard to kind of get over what's happened to her and then navigate the fact that, things aren't exactly what they seem. And who is this guy? And did she dream him into existence, or is she psychic, or, is it fate? What is it? And I wanted to set it in Cleveland because I feel like Cleveland as a city has so much grit and tenacity. I feel like, people like to poo-poo Cleveland and, like the mistake by the lake, but man, we don't give up, we keep on trucking along. And so I liked that. I wanted to set the story in like a gritty Midwestern city, like in the midst of revival, just like she is with her life.
That sounds wonderful. And it does sound like Cleveland. What would you say are your secret ingredients to a fun, swoony rom-com?
My secret ingredients. Well, banter, number one. Love banter. Dialogue, I think, is my favorite thing to write. So I think I love that sort of rapid fire back and forth when the characters are trying to one up each other, almost like a tennis match, but verbal. So I love that in a rom-com. Gotta have chemistry, of course, between the characters, and especially in an enemies to lovers story where the characters are starting out, where at least one of them really does not like the other, but to have that like crackling tension, like, ooh, like that loathing might just, flip into something else, but just having that strong emotion and that initial kind of, oh, there could be something there, between them is important. And then I guess too, compelling arcs for your characters. You can have all the fun banter and chemistry in the world, but if your characters are static, if they're not learning something, they're not changing, they're not growing, they're not sort of growing to a place where they can be together, I think the story is not going to be as compelling as it could be. So yeah, I would say that those are my 3 ingredients.
And what about the editing process? How many edits did you get from beginning of the product to when the book was actually published? And was it horrific, or were you able to tolerate it?
Yeah, so I don't mind editing. I feel like I can edit till the cows come home. I think filling a blank page is a lot harder for me. And because I'm a bit of a slow writer and I cannot help myself but to edit as I go, which they say don't do that on your first draft, but I do it because I just can't help it. So, by the time it took me about a year to write Shipped and to write the first draft, but really because, almost every day I was going back, like reading, okay, what was this last scene I did, kind of editing as I go. It was more like draft, 97. I don't even know. Like it was pretty polished. Although then I did go through subsequent edits. I ended up signing with a new agent. So I worked with her on a round of edits before she took it on submission to publishers. I worked on edits with my editor at Gallery Books, at Molly Gregory. She's amazing. And gosh, she helped me elevate the story in ways I hadn't even imagined, when I sat down and write it. She's so talented, has such a great eye. So yeah, sort of like infinite / like, I can't even tell you how many edits per se I did, like drafting. They were all sort of incorporated in the drafting process for me. But then it went through at least 4 or 5 rounds of edits between my agent and editor. Then it went through copy editing. So editing, lots of editing.
That's usually what I hear from writers. Speaking of writers, are there specific writers that you really admire that you want to emulate? Were they within your genre? Were they different genres? Talk to me about writers, other than the fact that they're wonderful people.
Yeah. So one of my favorite writers is actually a writing duo, Christina Lauren. I love them. Oh my goodness. So they were the first, their books were the first ones in contemporary romance that I ever read. I started reading romance about 15 years ago. A friend of mine gave me The Duke and I by Julia Quinn, which is now the Bridgerton series on Netflix is based off that. And The Duke and I is historical romance, and I fell in love with romance. I binged the whole Bridgerton series. I read Lisa Kleypas. I moved on eventually to like paranormal romance. So I was like, over a few years, I was kind of like checking out all the different romance subgenres. And then I landed on Beautiful Bastard by Christina Lauren, which was the first book in their Beautiful Bastard series. And it totally hooked me. And then a few years after that, I decided I wanted to get serious about being a writer. I had dabbled in writing since my mid-20s. So I dabbled in writing for like, several years. And after my son was born, I told myself, I'm like, you know what? I don't want to dabble in writing anymore. I want to be a writer. I want to finish a book. I was feeling very determined. Didn't want to look back when I was 80 and say, oh, I always want to finish a book. And I never did. So it was around that time, and I was working on writing my first book, and I was feeling very like, I'm going to do this. I saw a notice for an event, and it was the Spring Fling Romance event in Chicago with the Chicago North RWA chapter. And I saw that the headliners for this event were Christina Lauren. I'm like, oh, I got to get myself to Chicago. Like, absolutely. They're my heroes. Like, I loved their books so much. So I finagled a way to get out there for a weekend, and I heard them speak. They were the keynote speakers at this conference, and they were just so heartfelt. And I was so touched by how honest they were about how their journey to be these like megastar published authors was not like straight and easy. Like, no, they started out writing fan fiction, and like there was definitely, kind of bumps along the way. And just, I thought it was very, very humanizing. And it made me feel like, well, if they could do this, maybe I could do this. And it helped sharpen my resolve as this, baby writer, to keep going. And it did take, several years after that. It took me, I signed with an agent. I wrote this first book, she took it on submission, didn't get published. So then I wrote a second book. I ended up parting ways with my first agent, like got another one. Like it's, it was not linear. But I had in the back of my mind, just don't give up, because look what can happen when you don't, like with Christina Lauren. So I love them. They're awesome.
Okay, Angie, now we got to talk nitty gritty. Have you been to Hudson?
Have I been to Hudson? I've probably driven through there. So I live like on the farther west side. So it's a wee bit of a haul. I know I've been through, like, it's near the national park, like that sort of southeastern area is beautiful. And I was just thinking the other day, I'm like, man, I got to get out there. Like, because it's just.
Well, that brings me to the second point. when this wonderful pandemic is over, Angie, please, I will invite you again to the Hudson Library, and this time you'll come in person and do a program for us. We have a wonderful independent bookstore. Most people that are on this program already know about the Learned Owl, but the Learned Owl is just one of the most amazing independent bookstores in the United States. And you have to come and meet Kate and all the others that work there and, sign some books while you're there. But we would love to have you down to Hudson for your next book, or even come if you can now and sign some book plates if you happen to be on the far east south side. We love you and we wish you the best. I think that promoting your book in any way I can, I will do for you. And I hope that we all take a chance and an opportunity to read something new because, it expands our minds during this horrible pandemic, unfortunately, when we don't get to necessarily have the conversation and contact and with people that we normally would. Has being a writer, it sounds like it was in your blood. I mean, I think you were meant to be a writer, and we wish you the best. And I hope you keep writing. I hope that you come to Hudson, obviously. And let me double check that there aren't any other questions from the audience. I will tell you that Hudson, by and large, tends to be a community more of nonfiction than fiction. It's sort of a harder audience to gain, but I think when you find fiction writers, they're the most loyal there are. Have you been frustrated at all with trying to promote your book with audiences that don't normally read fiction?
Well, I've been one of the ways that I feel like I've been able to promote Shipped and that's really worked for me is through Instagram. There's a fabulous community on Instagram of readers that use the Bookstagram hashtag. And oh my gosh, like connecting with readers on there. I've been connecting with different book clubs, like reading groups. There was an ARC reading group, a group of readers who requested my book early through NetGalley to read and review that like had me come speak to them. So that's been really good. And I think just through this pandemic, the fact that we can't do really in-person events has forced me to kind of get out of my comfort zone and to really get online and engage with people in a way I might not have otherwise. So, in terms of trying to connect with people who maybe don't read romance, I suppose all I could do is tell them about like, hey, here's my book, here's the story. I think it'll give you a smile, and if it's their, bag of chips, then maybe they'll give it a try, and if not, well, there's a lot of books in the world.
Just on another question, I know that you're writing, let me get this right. You wrote for Simon & Schuster?
Mm-hmm.
And Simon & Schuster has recently sold out to Hachette. So will you now become an author under the Hachette umbrella? Do you know? I
don't know. Yeah. So I'm still working with my editor at Gallery Books, which is an imprint of Simon & Schuster, and just standing by, for more information. And like I said, I already have my second book under contract with them. And so I think the rights would transfer to whoever's the owner.
Oh, sure. Yeah. But people can look for you on your website. Yes. And look for your book at the Learned Owl. And I'm sure it's available in other bookstores. And certainly Simon & Schuster, if it all else fails, will be able to find a copy of your book to give to someone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So if you're interested in getting a copy of my book, you can visit my website. I have a list of retailers, but you can get it, at the big retailers, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. You can get it through Bookshop, IndieBound, through the Learned Owl bookstore. Definitely, support your local independent bookstore. So look on my website if you want to connect with me online. I'm active on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. So check it out. Shoot me a message if you read Shipped. I'd love to, hear what you think. And and for anybody who's interested, I'm going to do a little teaser very quickly. In about 2 weeks, there's going to be an announcement about a very big giveaway happening related to Shipped. So stay tuned. That's in 2 weeks. If you want to be like among the first to hear that news, sign up for my newsletter, which goes out not too often because I don't want to jam up people's inboxes. But, when there's something newsworthy to share, you'll get a little message from me. So you can sign up for that, angiehockman.com/newsletter.
We'll look for that as well. Thank you so much, Angie, for coming on tonight. And again, remember, you've always got an invitation to come to Hudson.
Well, thank
Good
you so
luck.
much, Gwen. I appreciate it. And thank you so much for inviting me. This was a blast, and I cannot wait to get out to Hudson in person and hopefully do an event with you guys soon.
Good luck with the book, and we'll look forward to meeting you when you come.
All
Take
right.
care, all, and thank you all for coming. Have a good evening.